What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Ian Ewing. Welcome to today's episode. On today's episode, we are going to do a quick recap of the preseason game we just saw on Saturday, week 2, and the first win of the 2025 campaign, even though it doesn't matter at all. And after that, we're going to talk about the defense. We're going to preview the whole unit, see who will make the team, who won't make the team, who's on the bubble, so on and so forth. But first, I wanted to talk about the supposed Micah Parsons trade rumor just really quickly. Obviously, just because it's a little bit of fun. I don't think we should put too much stock in this. To give you guys some context, the rumor came from the Pretty Ricky account on Twitter. If you guys are not familiar with this Twitter account, it's like I guess it's a guy probably with it's basically a dog, like the Target dog with a hat on. And his handle is like Pretty Ricky or something. So he has kind of become famous on Twitter because he's actually leaked a lot of real stories that have come out. So he's been right a few more times than you would expect a dog picture on Twitter to be. And yes, I call it Twitter, not X. I refuse to call it Twitter. If you guys want to follow me on X/Twitter, it's at Ian Ewing 227. I did reshare the recent rumor that I'm talking about. So evidently he's been correct a few times. He's been ahead of the Zach Allen extension, the TJ Watt extension. He has talked recently about, what's his name? Terry McLaurin from the Commanders being extended here in the next few days/weeks. I do think that's entirely possible. And if he ends up being right about that, there's a chance that this could validate some of the Packers rumors. He also had leaked/predicted that the Packers would re-sign Rasheed Walker when training camp came. I'm wondering if he heard Packers tackle and he thought Rasheed Walker instead of Zach Tom, or maybe he thought it was Rasheed Walker, but it was actually Quay Walker. As we know, the Packers are trying to extend Quay Walker as we speak. So regardless, I don't think we've seen much of any, validity from the guy on the Packers. He actually predicted the Packers were going to sign another player in free agency that they didn't. Again, it's hard to really give too much credence to this guy, but I do think it's a fun rumor to talk about. He essentially said the Packers have an offer on the table for Micah, and then there was another profile that said it was 2 first-rounders, a second, and a defensive starter. He goes on to say, Ricky, that he doesn't think that the trade's actually going to happen because he doesn't think Parsons is going to be traded. But if he does, that the Packers would be in the running. Micah Parsons, in my opinion, when he's healthy, he's probably the best defensive player in the whole league. And just the fact that the Cowboys are jerking this dude around, it kind of says everything you need to know about the Cowboys, right? I mean, they're just a kind of a joke of a franchise these days. I think it's very clear that our boy Jerry Jones is starting to lose it a little bit. I don't want to put that on the guy, but, the fact that they did that to CeeDee Lamb, they did that to Dak, it's just, come on, bro. It's time to give the reins over to somebody else. I tend to lean in the direction of he's probably not going to be traded. But if he does get traded, I do think the Packers will be in the mix on that. I actually think it's possible that he doesn't re-sign with them. He just plays out the season because I believe he's a free agent after this year. If he becomes a free agent, you got to think the Packers will be interested in him there. Will they be the team that outbids everybody else? Probably not. But as we know, Micah Parsons does have some rapport with our guy Jordan Love. Would he be worth that price? I would say yes. He would also have to command a $35 million contract or more. So I do think that, again, the Packers would be interested in this, but ultimately I don't think he's going to be a Packer. We can kind of dismiss that as it is. But I figured I'd talk about it because I've seen some buzz about it, and one particular person who's listening to this podcast probably did ask me the question. So wanted to address it here on the pod. You can see the vision with a Micah Parsons trade. You'd have Xavier McKinney in the secondary, Edgerrin Cooper at the second level, Micah Parsons on the defensive line. 5 years of that plus, that would be a hell of a core to build around. So we'll see what happens. Probably not going to happen, but it's not nothing, so I did want to talk about it. Let's talk about the preseason game this past weekend. The Packers ultimately win the meaningless preseason game, 23-19, where the Packers' second team basically played the Colts' first team for the entire first quarter. And I would say they held up pretty well. Again, the Packers' second-team defense did pretty well against Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor. The Colts didn't really do anything in that first quarter, especially on the ground. They bottled up Jonathan Taylor nicely. So, again, seeing the run defense improved last year, you wonder Okay, TJ Slayton's gone. Another year in the scheme. Will they still be good? The fact that the second team held Jonathan Taylor up pretty good is a good sign. There were some pretty bad broken coverages by Kamal Hadden. At cornerback, Isaiah Simmons looked lost again. We'll talk about both of them in a bit. Players who helped themselves in this game. Marshawn Lloyd. My God, that was fun. You guys heard my bold prediction a couple weeks back. I think if he stays healthy this year, again, that's the caveat. He did reportedly hurt himself again in this game, though it's not expected to be serious. He's a real weapon on offense this season, guys. Really, really nice wheel route out of the backfield where he basically just dusted a linebacker. Had a really nice low hands catch on it. He also had a really nasty juke move in the hole on the linebacker. That was really fun. He had a couple really, really tough runs as well, despite not really having anywhere to go. I think you just saw a quick glimpse there of just how special he can be, if he stays healthy. Now, that's the big if so far, but again, this was the first time that we actually saw Marshawn Lloyd in more than just a drive, right? I mean, he got some playing time against the Colts last year in the regular season, ended up getting hurt in that game after a couple nice runs. And again, we have to be really encouraged with that. Taylor Algersma, the quarterback from Canadian football that they signed as a UDFA, I think there's a good chance he ends up being the Packers' third quarterback this year. And he kind of showed why in this game. They gave him like the final 3 quarters after Willis left, and you really didn't see Sean Clifford until the final drive, which I thought was interesting. He looked pretty lost a few times. I think he kind of just, he sat back there a bit too long, held the ball too long, didn't really know where to go. But the dude has a howitzer of an arm. My God, absolute hose back there. A couple of just dots that he threw in the game. Again, really, really strong NFL arm. Showed it off a couple times in the game. That touchdown pass that was wiped away to Ben Sims, I think it was the third quarter. Man, he zipped that thing past 2 defenders. There were a couple other throws where he just showed a ton of arm talent. But again, it's very green, needs to be refined a lot. He clearly needs to learn the scheme better. If I had to predict right now, I think that he's going to be the third quarterback. And, I think Sean Clifford can be a guy they re-sign at a pinch. If Jordan were to get hurt, please don't get hurt. Please, please, please. And then they have Malik starting. They needed backup. I could see Sean Clifford being brought back for that. We'll see. But again, I think it's clear to me that they wanted to see Algersma play some extended snaps, and I think he did pretty well in this game. So, next person, Tyron Hopper. Man, he played another really good game here. Again, he was a third-round pick from last season. We'll talk about him a little bit in the linebacker part of this episode, but man, this is a guy who I was not happy when they drafted him. His tape was like 6th rounder, 7th rounder maybe, but he has the athleticism of a, second, third round linebacker. So you kind of saw the vision when they drafted him. Last offseason, he looked lost. He didn't really look confident, which made him look slow on the field despite being a really good athlete. He just hits really, really, really hard. When he hits somebody, you can hear it, you can see it. He was really active in the run game on this one. He flew around a little bit in the pass game as well. We're starting to see that athleticism a bit more because obviously he's in his second season and he's learned the scheme. I think there's a world this season where we see Hopper start in those 3 linebacker sets over Isaiah McDuffie. McDuffie's a good linebacker, kind of the old school linebacker, like your Nick Barnett type, the guy who's strictly a run defender. You don't want him out there covering people. But again, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Tyron Hopper. But again, the early returns are good on his camp and his preseason so far. Warren Brinson, really nice game here from him. He had a good game in the first game as well. Didn't really talk about him too much, but I think he had a pretty good grade from PFF. Really solid game here. A couple really nice pass rush snaps. There was one where he bent the edge on a guard, hit Anthony Richardson with his helmet off, mind you. There were a couple really nice run stops in there as well. I think he's having a pretty damn good preseason in camp so far. What's going to be interesting to see is, will they keep Brinson and Stackhouse, the 2 Georgia defensive tackles? Personally, I think they do. They find a way. Stackhouse played well in this one as well, but really encouraged with what we saw from Warren Brinson. Wide receivers, Cornelius Johnson and Julian Hicks both played well also. Hicks had a really, really nice one-handed catch on the sideline. I believe it was the end of the first quarter, and it was taken away from one of the million holding calls in the game. He had a couple other nice catches as well. There was a particular route that I saw in the All-22 that I really liked. He ran a really nice dig route against Charvarius Ward and got open. Obviously, Malik didn't throw it that way, but Charvarius Ward's a good corner. He's a starting corner in the league. One who I thought the Packers could be interested in, by the way, in the offseason. So I liked what I saw from Julian Hicks. Don't think he makes the team in the 53, but I think he's definitely a practice squad guy. Cornelius Johnson was a wide receiver they picked up last season on the practice squad. He was drafted, I believe, I could be wrong on that. He was a 2023 guy who went to Michigan. I really liked his tape in that draft. Kind of a fan of his. Got really nice size, good speed. I think both these guys end up being the two main wide receivers on the practice squad, but they both showed out in this one. Cornelius had that really, really nice snag. I think it was over the middle in the fourth quarter on that game-winning drive, or one of the final drives. Really, really nice hand sketch on that one. He reached way outside of his body to catch it. Malik Heath and McCole Hardman both played much better this week, and I did say that, Hicks could maybe jump Malik Heath if he had another bad game, but he played pretty well in this one, and he had a lot of first-team snaps in practice this week. So I think Hicks and Johnson are both practice squad guys. Quick shout-out to Isaiah Nair, the wide receiver they picked up off the 49ers waivers last week. We talked about him in the pre-draft as a late-round option for the Packers. I liked his tape. He's a freak. He's 6'4", 6'5". He ran a 4.40, like 4.4 flat. He had the third best RAS score in the whole draft at receiver this past season. He had an insane catch in Monday's practice, I believe it was. From El Gurzma, he threw it deep. Isaiah Nair just laid out for it and caught it. It was reportedly the best catch in camp so far. There were a couple throws this game where he was overthrown and underthrown, but he got open and beat his corner. I think I'd really like to see him on the practice squad. You could see him maybe developing into something down the road. Really, really green, but he's certainly athletic enough to be a good player, so we'll see on that one. Lastly, Jordan Morgan, another good game from Jordan Morgan. Man, you love to see it because there were a lot of people, including myself, who were not happy about that draft pick, and were even less happy about it when we saw Cooper DeJean's first rookie season. But, Jordan Morgan, another great game here. He played 61 snaps so far in the preseason. He's not a lot of pressure, no quarterback hits, nothing. So, again, he has shown out really, really well in camp so far. He had a really nice run blocking grade last week. A couple nice blocks in this one as well. He sealed the corner on one of Marshawn Lloyd's runs. Most importantly, though, he went against the Colts defensive end, Leatu Latu, who I really like, UCLA pass rusher from last season in the draft. I think he was a top 10 pick. The Colts think he's going to be insanely good this year. A lot of people have been talking about a possible breakout from him, and Jordan Morgan stuffed him. There was nothing on that end of the field from Leatu Latu. I said it in an episode a while back. I think the Packers want Jordan Morgan to win the left tackle job. I'm not the only person who said it, by the way, but I think it's pretty obvious because Rasheed Walker will not be here next season. Unless he doesn't start this season and they sign him back as a swing tackle. I even doubt that he takes that deal. We expect Walker to leave in free agency, and Jordan Morgan will be their long-term left tackle. But that being said, I think they wanted him to win this season. I think so far this is real competition. LaFleur said it in the press conference. Obviously, Walker's been hurt. He's back playing now. So we'll see this week who gets first-team snaps. I bet you Jordan Morgan gets a few of them. With Rasheed Walker, he's been a really solid pass blocker, not a great run blocker. So you got to think the vision here is if Jordan Morgan can be an improvement in the run game and then just be as good, if not a little bit better than Walker against the pass, that's a pretty big upgrade on already upgraded offensive line. Okay, as far as who struggled in the game, Anthony Belton. Moofda. Man, tough game at tackle. He ended up having like 5 penalties in this game. But again, when he actually is just able to block and not get penalized, he shows the talent, right? He's definitely a mauler in the run game. I did like a couple of his pass rush sets against the backups there. He actually had a nice pass rush rap against the starters as well. Again, I don't know what I'm looking at with offensive line, but when I see clips posted and people reacting to him, I take that as, word that he did well. Again, he's really green at this point. A lot of people think, and people who I trust better than my opinion, think he's going to be a right guard next year. Probably take over Sean Ryan's position. I think there's a real world where the Packers give Sean Ryan some play at center this year. We already saw it in this game. They release Elton Jenkins. I hope that's not the case, right? And then they put Anthony Belton at right guard. So we'll see. Right now, Anthony Belton's the 7th O lineman. He's not played any guard in camp, so again, seems to be the swing tackle, but that could swing into guard if need to be. I think if we saw a couple interior injuries, the first person that would go inside is Jordan Morgan. If we had another one, I think Zach Tom would kick inside, and then Anthony Belton would play right tackle. So we'll see on that one. Hopefully we can clean up some of his games. Being the 7th offensive lineman, you got to think he's going to get some snaps in the regular season, so hopefully he can clean that stuff up. Donovan Jennings and Jacob Monk, two guards in the game. They had a tough game again. Keep in mind, DeForest Buckner was going against them, and he tends to make a lot of people look bad. So, again, I expected better from these two, especially Donovan Jennings. I talked about him in a couple off-season episodes. I think at cut down times, there's a real world where they look at some sort of veteran interior lineman that could maybe be the eighth offensive lineman, somebody who can lead that room, provide a veteran experience in there. We'll see on that. Isaiah Simmons, who he looked rough again in coverage. He had a couple of bad angles in the run game as well. I had really high hopes that he could have a bit of a breakout season and be that third linebacker. I think we were all spoiled with what we saw from Zach Bond last season from the Eagles. A guy who, I think he was like a third-round pick by the Saints. He played pass rusher. The Eagles saw him as an inside linebacker, goes to them and has an all-pro season. You thought maybe there could be something like that with Isaiah Simmons, but that has not come to fruition in any way, shape, or form. They signed him because he's a great special teamer. But at this point, I think Tyron Hopper and Christian Welch are both ahead of him, both in what we've seen in the actual gameplay and special teams. Christian Welch had another nice game here as well. Honorable mention, quick shout out to Bo Melton. He's clearly the fourth corner on the team. He only played like the first quarter, a few snaps in there. Had a really nice pass breakup on Ashton Doolin, who I like. I think he's like the Colts' fifth wide receiver, but really nice play on a slant in the game. He holds his own in the tackle game, being able to tackle players. That's the one thing you worry about, putting a receiver out there at corner. But he did a nice job in this game. So let's get to the defensive preview. We're going to start on the defensive line. Your starters are going to be Lucas Van Ness, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, and Rashawn Gary. You guys know prior to the season, even before what I saw in camp, I predicted in the Bold Predictions episode that we're going to see a breakout season from LVN this year. By all accounts, we've seen it in camp. He had a really, really strong week of practice again this week. Andy Herman of the Pack-A-Day podcast said that he had the most dominant practice he's ever seen from a player in the entire camp this year. There were a couple reps he won against the Colts starters on both sides, including against Bernard Ryman, who was literally just paid like a ton of money. I think this season we're going to see 50-plus pressures, 8-plus sacks. Most importantly, it's going to allow teams it's going to force teams to not chip on Gary and actually have a threat on the other side, right? Rashawn Gary, really nice game, or really nice season last year on third down. We talked about that in the previous episode, that I think this is the season he goes over 10 sacks, finally. We saw an increase last year in what he did in the run game, and what we saw on third down was still really, really good. But, like I said, he was chipped on almost every play. So if we can see LVN be really good on the other side, where, teams are forced, they can't just go to Gary's side and chip him. They have to also look at LVN's side. Plus what we're going to see in the interior, which we'll talk about in a second. I think that we're going to see a much more productive season from Rashawn Gary. For the backup DNs, we have Kingsley Enagbare, Brenton Cox, and the rookies, Barron Sorrell and Colin Oliver. Reminder to Enagbare, he had that knee injury at the end of 2023. Everybody thought that he tore his ACL, and then we found out in camp last year that he didn't tear his ACL. It was just a tweak of some kind. It took him a while in 2023 to look like himself. I thought he looked really promising in 2023, especially in 22 when he took over as a starter there. I think it's entirely possible that we see a really strong season from Enagbare. He's had a really good camp. He showed out really well in the preseason. I guess, according to the Colts beat writers, he tore up the joint practice this week too. I thought I thought there was a chance that he was going to be a cut candidate because, again, if you're looking at Brenton Cox or Kingsley Enagbare, if they're even close to the same level of play, Brenton Cox is going to be a lot cheaper. I think if they cut Enagbare, they're going to save like $2 million in the cap. There's zero chance that he gets cut now from what we've seen in camp. He's kind of a different flavor of pass rusher, and this is why I like him. He brings a ton of moves that, Gary and LVN do not have. He's very finessey when he rushes. He's got that really good spin move. He's got kind of a cross chop that he does. He is really, really effective on stunts. I think he can be somebody, especially, again, LVN and Gary are guys who take and convert speed to power. That's what their entire game is. I think Brenton Cox is a mix of both types of rusher. He's also had a nice camp. He's probably on the outside looking in, but that brings me to my next point. We still have not seen Colin Oliver due to his injury. I think it's a soft tissue injury. We still haven't even seen him practice yet. And then Barron Sorrell, who I love, as you guys know, he had a really strong game last week. He had a good practice this week. Of course, he goes into this game and hurts his knee. Matt LaFleur said he'll miss some time, quote unquote. And that's what they said about Marshawn Lloyd as well, by the way. Although it was reported that Marshawn Lloyd's is not serious, so we'll see. The thing that's interesting about Sorrell's injury is he was on the bike riding, during the game, trying to get back in the game. They obviously held him out because why would you go in there in a meaningless game? But that tells me that at least it's probably not a long-term injury, right? Colin Oliver, again, I was stoked about him after the draft. He's definitely a different flavor of pass rusher than anybody else they have. Again, he's that 6'3", 245 speed rusher type. Again, I don't think they're going to subject him to waivers. So I think if we don't see him this week, I think they're probably going to put him on IR, designated to return, and then we see Brenton Cox make the team. So we'll see what happens on that. But again, I really like the pass rushers here. Again, would I love it if they traded for Trey Hendrickson or Micah Parsons? Yes, obviously. But I think at this point we have to roll with what they have. Defensive tackle, we got Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, obviously, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, Warren Brinson, the rookie from the 6th round, and the UDFA Nazir Stackhouse. Those are the guys we're going to be looking at to play real snaps this year. Kenny Clark, he's going to bounce back major this season, I think. He had last season his worst year as a pro by far. And then we find out a few weeks back, I think it was a couple months back even, that he had a foot injury that he played through almost the entirety of this season. So that obviously explains a lot. I mean, we saw a dramatic drop-off from Kenny Clark last year after it was a career year in 2023. I think he set his PR in sacks. He had a ton of really good pass rush snaps. He was good in the run game. We're going to see Kenny Clark play more nose tackle this year just because of who else they have. I think we'll see a bit of a return to form to Kenny Clark this season. Devontae Wyatt, I predicted in the bold predictions, he's going to be the most consistent pass rusher all season. I stand by that. He was signed back on the 5th-year option. He is going to get paid after this season. I think he's going to deserve it as well. One thing I do think we're going to see from Wyatt, I think we're going to see better finishes from him. What we've seen in recent years is he'll get pressure, but he just doesn't finish it. So I think we'll see a better finish from him this year, which will lead to more sacks, which is nice. But I also think we're going to see more impact on early downs, again, because I think if the Packers get what they want here, Nazir Stackhouse is going to make the team, and he's going to be the TJ Slayton replacement that they need. But I do think if and when Devontae Wyatt's asked to defend in the run game, we're going to see a little bit more of Hafley's scheme show up with him. Again, his scheme is all about shooting gaps and causing disruption, freeing up lanes for the linebackers to flow in. So again, I think that we'll see a little bit better from him in that area. Carl Brooks had a quiet camp. No one's really been talking about him. But we did see a nice week from him last week in the preseason. Apparently he started to show up a little bit in practice. I think we're going to see a little bit closer to the 2023 version. I think he had 6 sacks in 2023 as a rookie. Really, really gifted hands. Again, he can hand fight better than anybody I've seen, especially somebody who's not overly athletic. He just wins by being smarter than everybody else. And then more importantly, he shoots off the ball really, really quickly. Like he gets a jump that nobody else does. We did not see the jump from him in 24 like we thought. So many other players, we can also say that about them. So that leaves it down to Colby Wooden, Warren Brinson, and Nazir Stackhouse fighting for what I believe is 2 spots. To me, you just bring Warren Brinson and Nazir Stackhouse, and I think you cut Colby Wooden, even though he's shown off well in practice so far in preseason, and then you just try to get him back in the practice squad. Now, again, injuries will have a factor there, right? I think if we see a couple of these guys IR to start, it does free up a little bit of space for all 3 of these guys to make the team. But I think it's 2 spots. It's Wooden, Brinson, and Stackhouse for 2 spots. I think, again, Stackhouse has the most unique skill set. He's the one that can do what others can't, right? He's that run stuffer in the middle. And I really like what I've seen from him in the preseason so far. People who know a lot more than me about football have said the same thing. So I like his chances of making the team as that TJ Slayton replacement. I really like the defensive tackle overall. I did want them to do something in the draft here, and that was I felt a little bit disappointed there. Now, granted, if you guys remember, all the guys who I thought they would take were picked prior to the Packers picking, especially Derek Harmon. He was picked, I think, 2 picks before the Packers from the Steelers. So, again, we can't really be too mad about who they did or didn't take. TJ Sanders in the 2nd round, he was way gone before that. So, again, I think hearing that Kenny Clark was hurt and getting an explanation as to why he fell off so bad last season, it makes me feel a bit better about where they're at this season. Okay, let's go to linebacker. Edgerrin Cooper, baby. He's going to break out this season. He's going to show himself to be a star. We've heard a lot about the Packers not having, great players. right? And I agree. The thing is, they have 5 to 7 really good players that could become great this season, and Edgerrin Cooper is one of them. I think he's going to be an all-pro this season. He's going to be the best player on this defense, and that's a defense with Xavier McKinney, by the way. Everything we saw from him last season, I think he's going to build on it. One thing we didn't see a lot of from him last season is blitzing. When he did blitz, he often got home, and he got sacks. I think he had 4.5 sacks last year. That was what he did at Texas. He was a QB spy and a blitzer, and he was insanely good at it. So one of the reasons we didn't see that as much is because early on he was still learning how to be a pro, right? And then Quay Walker was in and out of the lineup last season. So again, when you have Isaiah McDuffie back there who literally can't cover, right, sending Edgerrin Cooper on obvious pass downs, leaving Isaiah McDuffie back there to block or to guard tight ends and receivers is not a good idea. So with Quay Walker being a bit more healthy this season, I think that's going to really we're going to see a lot more pass rush chops from Edgerrin Cooper. Like I said, Cooper's going to blow your mind this year. Then we have Quay Walker, who I think is going to also have his own version of breakout this season as well. What I mean by breakout is we're going to see a lot closer to what we saw at the middle of last season, right? Remember the Bears game from last year? There was a play, I'll never forget it as long as I live. He had Caleb Williams dead to rights in the backfield, and he looked like he was just scared to hit him. And, Caleb Williams steps up, gets a first down. I believe they score on that drive. It was one of the worst games I've ever seen a linebacker play. And if you guys know, as a Packer fan, you know how bad the linebackers have been since basically Nick Barnett left and Desmond Bishop, who I loved. So, again, I thought he was going to get benched from that. What happens after that? He steps up and plays his best football yet. The game after the Bears game, I believe it was the Dolphins. I can't remember for sure. He shows out, and he shows why he was a first-round pick. He really did play well in stretches last season, so if we can see that the entirety of this season, it's going to be massively helpful. This is his contract year. We've already heard from Goody that they're trying to work on an extension from him. My guess is we don't see that until he shows a bit more chops in 2025, but I think it's going to be really fun to watch this year, seeing him and Cooper in the middle. Then we have Isaiah McDuffie, who they surprisingly signed that 2-year deal in the offseason. He's at least early going to be linebacker 3. Not a big McDuffie fan myself. I think he's a massive liability in the passing game, covering tight ends. And frankly, if he's going to be asked to do that a lot this season, I think I'd rather see Hopper out there. But again, if you see him in like short down and distances and you want to kind of have him just defending the run early downs, I think I'm okay with it. I think we're going to see a lot of Hopper anyway, just because of how well he's played so far and the leap we're seeing. But again, Isaiah McDuffie, core special teamer. He's the third linebacker as of now. That leaves Christian Welch and Isaiah Simmons fighting for what I think is one spot. Personally, I just talked a little bit earlier about the excitement I had when they signed Isaiah Simmons, especially just from the special teams ability. But Christian Welch has just played a lot better. If it were up to me, I would probably still give it to Simmons just because, again, pure upside. He had a 90-plus PFF grade last year on special teams. But based off what we've seen in camp this year so far, Christian Welch has played much better. So I think Christian Welch probably makes it. If it were me picking, it would probably be Isaiah Simmons. They're probably going to cut Simmons. Let's get to corner, which is the position everyone is most afraid of. And I understand, and we'll talk about it in a second, but obviously this was an offseason where we saw Jair cut and signed by the Ravens for next to nothing. So again, I think I understand why Packer fans are a bit scared here. Obviously, a lot of sports analysts and pundits are very worried about the Packers cornerback room, but I think it's because they don't really know what they have, and people like Carrington Valentine and Keyshawn Nixon, right? They see, Eric Stokes, the former first-round pick, was cut. Okay, that's massive. That's a first-round pick. And Jair, not knowing what we know as Packer fans, right? They think, Eric Stokes, former first-round pick, Jair, former first-round pick, cut. Like, who do they have? To me, losing Eric Stokes was addition by subtraction, right? So the prevailing wisdom is they have 3 slot guys. That's the other thing I've been hearing a lot more. To me, that just proves they didn't really watch games last season. That's fine. These pundits have 32 teams to watch. I don't expect them to know, what we know. Keyshawn was an average slot guy at best, in my opinion. Due to his agility, he just can't really, can't stay with the faster slot guys. But he was good as a slot guy because he'd come up and hit, right? We saw a couple plays. That Cowboys playoff game, he comes up and sacks Dak on a blitz, which I thought was really fun. we saw some really good stuff from him when they moved him outside last year. And I think we're going to see a bit more. Obviously, we're going to see a lot of Keyshawn on the outside this year. Nate Hobbs, he was signed from the Raiders in the offseason where he played primarily as a slot guy. So it sounds like we're going to see a little bit of both from him. We're going to see outside corner for Hobbs and slot. And I expect we see Hobbs break out this season. Again, you guys heard me in the bold predictions episode. If we learned one thing from Goody, he knows how to use his free agent money. So I think we're going to see Hobbs break out a little bit. My bold prediction this year was, if you remember correctly, he's going to have a better season than Jair. And the metric we're going to use to grade that is PFF. And again, some people hate PFF. We've already heard about Jair having some injury issues in camp. And that's funny because Hobbs is injured right now, right? But I digress. I think Hobbs is going to surprise a lot of people this year, especially the ones who are the Packer fans who were salty about Jair being cut. Then we have Carrington Valentine, who I think could end up being the best of all the corners. Again, I think Carrington Valentine, again, 7th-round pick in 2023, he was considered by many like a 3rd-round guy. Like Mel Kiper, if you guys watched the draft that year, they always have like Kiper's available players on the side there, best available players. And Carrington Valentine was there from like the end of day 2 all the way to the end of day 3. So personally, I think there's a lot of potential there that Carrington can take a jump this year. Last season, here's a good stat for you guys. He had the fewest targets in the entire league when he was in man coverage. So he showed a ton of chops in his rookie year as well, but this is year 3 for him. I think we're going to see a big jump from him. His biggest issue, it's always been tackling, right? He got absolutely stuffed last year from Dallas Goedert in the playoff game by the Eagles. Hopefully we can see an improvement there, but if he hasn't improved as a tackler, if he can cover the way he has, I do think that we're going to see a really big season from him. I think if you had to ask me who's going to have the most picks out of the whole cornerback room, I would vote Carrington Valentine. As far as the other cornerbacks we have Kalen King, who was the 7th rounder in 2024, Kamal Haddon, who was actually drafted by the Chiefs in 23 in round 6. They got him last year off the Chiefs practice squad. Then we have our boy Bo Melton. I think he's a lock to make the team. He's CB4 at this point. Micah Robinson, their 7th rounder from this season. By all accounts, he's had a pretty good camp as well. It's going to be really interesting to see who they keep here. I think they're going to keep 5. It'll be obviously the main 3. It'll be Bo Melton, and I think it's going to be, if I had to guess, probably Kamal Haddon because of what he did last season. He's got the biggest upside, I think, as well. But, Kalen King, he's looked good in the preseason so far. He can play the slot where I don't think Kamal Haddon can play the slot. So I do think that it's possible Kalen King gets that spot, but Goody doesn't like to cut his draft picks, so Micah Robinson could be that guy. I do think that there's 5 cornerbacks to make the team. Bo Melton, again, he's making the team. I think we're going to see a lot of fun stuff from him this year. I don't think we're going to see like good corner in 2025, but I think if we can see okay corner when he's asked to compete, I think if he does well, we should take that as a massive win. And he's obviously going to be a big special teamer as well. That brings us to Javon Bullard, the Packers 2nd rounder from 2024. So obviously we've seen a lot of clips of him where he's just getting roasted in one-on-ones. To me, and Matt LaFleur kind of said this, right? They're not really real. The offense has a massive advantage. But I think when you see him getting toasted in one-on-ones, and then you remember what Jordan Addison did to him in that first Vikings game last year, right? Again, I think that Javon Bullard is a good player. I think if on any other team, he'd be a starting safety. I think we're going to see him play the slot. I am curious to see what they do with him. In that same press conference, LaFleur said that he's had, quote, an outstanding camp. And he went out of his way to say that about Javon Bullard. So I do think that, again, the Packers like him a lot more than the fans do. Again, everybody sees Javon Bullard and they think Cooper DeJean and I get it. But I do think we should, still be patient on Javon Bullard. On early downs, here's what I think they're going to do. They're going to have Keyshawn and Nate Hobbs on the outside. Javon Bullard will be in the slot on the not obvious passing downs. So 1st, 2nd down, long 3rd downs maybe. On passing downs, Hobbs is going to move inside. Bullard will go out, and Bullard will be replaced by Carrington Valentine. They've been doing that in camp already. I think that's the best way to utilize your cornerback room and use their strengths. So again, I think I'm much higher in the cornerback room than everybody else is. They were very good last year, and Jair barely played. Okay, let's not forget that. They were a top 5 defense last year in DVOA, top 10 defense in scoring and yards, especially pass defense. And that was with Eric Stokes playing real snaps. Eric Stokes was, by all accounts, terrible last year. So let's not get too upset about the cornerback room. Yes, the depth is scary, right? But if they lose 2 starting cornerbacks this year, that's already dangerous enough. So, we'll see what happens. Okay, last but not least, we have the safety room, which in my opinion is the best safety room in the NFL. Obviously, we have Xavier McKinney. We have to start there. All-Pro last season. This year, he's going to be back and better than ever. I expect another All-Pro season from him. Probably another 5+ picks as well. We all need to take a step back and understand just how good he is, okay? He and Evan Williams, he specifically, are why the Packers didn't want to spend the money on Jair. Teams completely stopped throwing deep on them last year. And just go watch from like week 9 on, nobody threw deep. Because every time they threw deep, Xavier McKinney would get a pick, right? There's a reason he had 2 picks the final half of the season, right? So again, I think that, I expect nothing different this year. We're going to see increased play from Evan Williams and better, if not really improved, from Xavier McKinney, his second year in the scheme. One thing I do think they're going to do a little bit more of this year with Xavier McKinney is blitz him. I think he's got a lot of upside blitzing. I just think that last year they kind of avoided it because, Evan Williams was rookie. Again, they had Eric Stokes starting outside, right? So I do think we're going to see a lot more of that from Xavier McKinney this year, and that's going to be super fun. Evan Williams lines up next to him. He's going to be the starter on the other side. I think we're going to see a big jump from him this year as well. Now, again, statistically, some of these 2024 guys are not going to take a jump, right? We have to be prepared for that. I think that they need all of them to take a jump if they're going to be Super Bowl contenders. But, Evan Williams started out really, really strong last year, particularly against the Rams game. He had a couple really nice PBUs in that game. He had a really nice game against the Texans. I thought he had made some really good tackles there. His best play of his rookie year, though, was the way he stuffed that RPO against Kyler Murray against the Cardinals. If you watch the little NFL.com cut-up of that game, it shows up in there, and they slowed down the broadcast, everything. Evan Williams is super, super, super smart. He's athletic, and he works insanely hard. By all accounts, he's had a good camp as well. Again, you don't want to hear the safeties' names. So the less you hear about the safeties outside of interceptions, the better, right? And we haven't heard a lot of Evan Williams in camp. Okay, after that, we have Keaton Oladapo, who's played pretty well in preseason. He's been playing a lot of snaps because, Xavier McKinney's hurt. Evan Williams is the starter. He's going to be the third safety, depending on how they view Javon Bullard, right? I think if one of the safeties got hurt, they'd probably still put Javon Bullard out there, but I'm not sure, right? Oladapo was the 5th-round pick last year in that draft. I loved his tape from Oregon State. He hits, man. He's like a diet Ed Reed. Now, again, I don't hate to even put anyone in the same conversation as Ed Reed, but athlete, right? Ed Reed was a great athlete, covered a lot of range back there, and he could hit super, super hard. That's what we've seen from Keaton Oladapo so far in camp as well. He did play late in the season against the Bears. He played 50 snaps and graded out super well by PFF. So they go 4 deep if you include Bullard. Love that group. Omar Brown was having a really nice camp until that preseason game last week, this week. He had that really scary chest injury. He's probably not going to be active the whole season, but we'll see. And then we have Zane Anderson, who, if you guys remember, he played real snaps against the Saints last year, and I think he started that game, and he played really, really well. But again, he got hurt in the first preseason game this year. Sounds like he's going to be fine for the regular season. But again, if Zane Anderson is your 4th or 5th safety, depending on how they view Bullard, that's a hell of a room, right? Zane Anderson's also a really core special teamer as well. I like, him as a backup as well. We'll see. As far as other safeties in the mix, not a lot of them, right? They have Jonathan Baldwin, who I believe, I don't remember what school he went to. They signed him as a UDFA corner, but ended up moving him to safety. By all accounts, he's had a pretty nice camp, but he's probably going to be on the practice squad. All right, 40 minutes in, guys. We are done with this episode. We previewed the defense. As you guys can tell based on my tone, and obviously you can't see my smile yet. We'll get to that in a second. This is a really, really strong defensive group. They're really, really strong at linebacker and safety. They got a lot of depth up front, a lot of high upside players with a lot to prove, and a very underrated cornerback room. So again, they were top 5 in DVOA last year. I believe they were 3rd. Top 7 in yards, top 10 in points. I know it's easy to forget with how the season ended, but this defense is really good in 2024. And they only got better in the offseason, right? Quick reminder, the Packers absolutely stymied the Eagles. If you think about that Eagles game, right, 7 of those points were because of Keyshawn Nixon's fumble that wasn't a fumble on the opening kickoff, right? There were so many points in that game, that Eagles playoff game, where I was like, okay, they're going to bust it open now, and the Packers are going to be down by 20 points any minute now. And they kept them in the game, the entire game, of 16-10 at the end of the third quarter. The Packers defense played really, really well against the Super Bowl champions, right? And they've only gotten better. So I think we need to lay off a little bit on the freak out, right? The improvement on defense this year relies on a few things. LVN breaking out. I think we're going to see a really big improvement from him, at minimum improvement. I think he's going to end up being really good this year. Again, 50-plus pressures, still good in the run game, 8+ sacks, right? Number 2, Devontae Wyatt stabilizing the interior, staying healthy, getting a ton of pressure. Number 3, Edger and Cooper continuing to rise to stardom. And then Quay Walker being what we saw at that midpoint last season. Again, their improvement also relies on Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams still being that top 3 safety group, and I think they will be. And then the most important thing is that cornerback room being as good as I think they can be, right? If they're just good, or again, just slightly better than last season, they do not have to be great. I want to be clear about that because of how good the safeties are. That's going to be a massive win. I think the chances are the majority of that stuff happens that I just went into, and we see a really, really strong group this year. Again, if the Packers offense can be what we saw at the end of 2023 and the Packers defense can be what we saw last season, this is a Super Bowl team. Okay. Again, Jeff Hafley, I didn't even know who he was when they hired him. I don't think any of us did. He was, by all accounts, an insane surprise and a really, really, really good coach last season. Did a lot for the team. I personally think that he's probably going to have about 20 head coaching jobs this offseason. Interviews, sorry. Probably not 20, but you get the point. So hopefully he decides not to leave. Again, I'm a little concerned about the depth at corner. If we don't see the jump from LVN and we don't see pass rush in the interior, I think that's a bit scary. But I trust Jeff Hafley to at least make them a top 10 unit just with creative blitzes, right? So I am massively excited for the group of defensive players this year. That's going to do it for this episode. I appreciate you guys listening all the way to the end here. Hopefully this was fun for you. Do me a massive favor, comment, leave a 5-star review, download the podcast. It helps me know how many people are actually listening every week. It's interesting because it shows me how many people download it. It doesn't show me how many people actually listen to it, which is annoying. So downloading it would be a massive help for me. I am moving into a new apartment in about 2 weeks, and I'm going to have a nice setup for the podcast in there. I'm going to start doing video of the podcast, so I can get more people on YouTube. Love to have you tune into the video when I do that, but listening is just fine for now. I appreciate you guys listening. Packers got the Seahawks for joint practice this week and the preseason game. We will do a full recap of that, as well as my hot takes for the NFL overall this next week. But until then, guys, thank you for listening, and go, Pack, go.